people want to know about Jaxson Dart. So the deal on Jaxson Dart, one more time, would be that we're talking about a lightly regarded quarterback in high school football at Utah before his senior season. And I've heard it explained that basically he just lit it up as a senior and lit it up at the various camps, and suddenly he became a hot commodity and went to USC under Clay Helton, backed up Keaton Slovis, who was well established and entrenched as the starter last year. But once Slovis was injured, he couldn't get his starting spot back. Dart played well in about half the season there at USC. I don't remember the numbers, maybe 9 touchdowns, 5 picks comes to mind off the top of my head last year at USC. But yeah, he is not going to have an issue finding a landing spot. Certainly he is much pursued here, and Oklahoma's in the running. So what can we speculate at this point? Because I use that word because people want to know exactly what's going on, and that's impossible to nail down. But as best we can take from this situation at this point.
Yeah, it's really interesting, Mark. To your point, I think it's really down. I think the Oklahoma and Ole Miss at this point for Jaxson Dart, and even excuse me, and even Mike Trigg for that matter. It was really speculated that they would probably be a duo, meaning they probably would go to the same place. That's not necessarily true, not necessarily accurate from what I've heard. But the way kind of this has went down, Mark, is Trigg and Dart basically made their visits together. So they went to Oklahoma last week, had a really good visit, and it went even a little bit longer than expected. Went kind of half a day longer than they initially intended it to be. Then they went and visited Ole Miss. Kind of the same situation I heard went really well on that side. Oklahoma had an in-person visit with Dart last night. Haven't really got a lot of feedback just in terms on how well that went. Ole Miss had one earlier in the day. So I think when you look at this, from my perspective, it's always good to have the last meeting, right? I mean, it's fresh within some of these kids' minds. So kind of what I've gotten, I've kind of heard some unconfirmed reports that Trigg was actually in Norman yesterday. Don't know how valid those are, but heard that was the case. He would be a great get for Oklahoma, even if they're not able to get Dart. I think he would be a great get just because of what the timing and who Oklahoma has in the tight end room, because they've lost quite a bit. Lost Austin Stogner, Jeremiah Hall's gone, so they've got Braden Willis and a few younger kids there. So I think it's interesting. Exactly your point on speculation. From everything I'm hearing, the Ole Miss insiders they feel very good about where they're at. Oklahoma feels pretty confident as well about where they're at. And I think, Mark, what the determining factor is here is, with some of these kids, what's their where's their best opportunity to play right away, right? And I think, one might lean that Dart has an easier path at Ole Miss, given that the experience that Dylan Gabriel has with Oklahoma, and his relationship with Jeff Lebby as well. I think if Oklahoma is able to sell Dart on the fact that, yes, you can come in and compete right away, get every opportunity to win that job next year. However, looking at the trajectory of Dylan Gabriel, hey, even if you sit a year, you're the guy next year, considering if Dylan Gabriel moves on, if he has a good year next year. So I think that's the decision point. Mark, wouldn't be surprised to see it go either way. Wouldn't be surprised to see them split from what I've heard. Trigg absolutely loved his time in Norman, is probably more of a lean towards Oklahoma at this time. Dart, maybe it's hard to get any information because they've both been very pro both schools on Twitter. They've, you take, typically these recruits will take pictures in uniforms and stuff like that, and they were very pro OU, but then very pro Ole Miss as well. So I think it's 50-50 right now. I don't know that there's an initial lean, but I think it'll be interesting to see with Venables having that last meeting with with Dart if that was able if he was able to kind of seal the deal and exactly get get Oklahoma in the door and get Dart to Norman. And I think when you look at this, the last thing I'll say, Mark, is on this. When you look at this, it almost feels like a luxury more than a necessity for Oklahoma for Dart, because when you look at Oklahoma, they've got Dylan Gabriel, they've got the true freshman Nick Evers is coming in. You've got Micah Bowens, who transferred in from Penn State last year, and then you've got the preferred walk on Ralph Rucker, who's still, so their quarterback room is pretty heavy. So I don't think there's really a concern from a depth perspective. Now, you don't pass on a guy like Dart, who is probably the highest rated transfer guy remaining on the board, regardless of position. So you're able to secure a guy like that, then that's what you want. Obviously, what you want to do. But I think it's a much bigger luxury than an absolute need. But what a great luxury that would be to have two kids like that being able to battle for that starting spot for Oklahoma next year.
And what you alluded to a second ago, we can only speculate on in regards to that particular player's mindset about competition, meaning whether they want a ready-made landing spot where obviously every roster has quarterbacks to compete, but basically they know based on what they've put on tape and on the stat sheet that they're going to win a job at said university versus, okay, this is a toss up. This other guy's really good. He's got a track record as well. And this is going to be an open competition, but I'm willing to possibly lose the job because I really like this coaching staff. I really like this university. Maybe this is an Oklahoma versus a mid-tier program, and I'm willing to sit for the season or risk sitting for the season to be at Oklahoma versus being somewhere else. All those things, it all depends on the player. So there is no mold for the decision process for any particular player. They all value different things slightly, and it's a bit of a guessing game. And just like the crystal ball on 247 Sports with the recruiting, they take their best shot on the information that they have. Some of these, I guarantee, even though I don't know that much about it, but in speaking to enough recruiting people, that some of those crystal ball indicators are very strong and confident based on having a lot of connections to the inner circle, but other ones are just kind of reading the tea leaves and getting a lean based on a lot of periphery things and really not knowing, but taking a shot at it. So we kind of do the same thing here. But as we've seen with various coaching moves just this off season, a lot of it just comes out of nowhere and nobody had any idea. So
yeah, no, you're absolutely right, Mark. And I think the one thing that I would say, just based on, and you're absolutely right, the mentality of some of these kids is interesting just to see, and that determines a lot of where they go. Are you a kid that wants the luxury of feeling like, okay, I don't have a big challenge in front of me in terms of competition. But when you look at a kid like Jaxson Dart, understanding that he went to USC, knowing that Keaton Slovis was the guy, maybe that leads things to believe a little bit that he's not one of those kids that shies away from competition, things like that. But I think the one thing also that he has to obviously keep in mind, if he goes to Oklahoma or Ole Miss, wherever he ends up going, and he doesn't get that job, if he was to go somewhere else, now he's got to sit another year. So I think he's being patient and just understanding, okay, just to get a really good feel on what where he feels the most comfortable at. Culture is a big thing as well, obviously, with some of these visits, and Oklahoma's doing a wonderful job in changing the culture for just the program under Brent Venables. One of the things that he talked about early on, he's very, very big on servant leadership. He's really big on treating these kids like equals, coaching them hard, demanding the best from them, but also at the end of the day, being there for the kids. I mean, and no other thing was more evident when some of the early enrollees came in a couple of days ago, and you saw Brent Venables and the rest of the coaching staff out there helping carrying their kids' belongings to their dorm room. And so it's something that's probably small and insignificant to us looking, but I think to those kids, understanding that, the head coach, the guys that are, that have so much going on with these portal guys, with early or late signees, and they're taking the time to come in and, help me move individually, taking pictures and stuff like that. I think that really means a lot to those kids. And, some of the ex-players are saying, I was there 3 or 4 years and Lincoln Riley never visited my dorm room even once. And so I think that is going a long way and just kind of changing that culture. So I think that all those things combined with Caleb Williams still hasn't made a decision. So, he could possibly be waiting to see exactly what Caleb decides to do before making that public decision.
And just to backtrack and extend on your point about Michael Trigg, nobody's going to be impressed if they look at a stat sheet. He caught 7 passes last year. And of course, Jaxson Dart played, plus he plays quarterback. So he's gaining all the attention. But we're talking about a guy who was the 4th rated tight end in the country coming out of high school and a top 130 player nationally, regardless of position, top 20 player in the state of Florida. So if he fulfills those expectations and that scouting report, then he's going to be a player. So that could be a huge addition right there.
Yeah, and it's definitely like I said, it's a position of need. Right, like Oklahoma has gone with Jeff Lebby's system. They've gone away from that H-back mentality. So they're all tight ends. So, but like I said, you've got Braden Willis, who is a guy that has played quite a bit coming back this year. But then you've got some new guys. Jason Llewellyn, Caden Helms are a couple of true freshmen that have come in early, which is very, very good that they're in early. But at the same time, they've never played. And then you've got the transfer from Missouri, Daniel Parker, coming in as well. But he's mostly a blocking tight end. So yeah, I think having Trigg here may be even a greater need as opposed to having Dart. But obviously Oklahoma wants both of them.